Hey, everybody. Richard Bliss Brooke here for yet another global influencer interview. And today I have the deep honor and friendship to bring you Sonia Stringer from San Diego, California. She is the founder of the Biz Academy for Women.com, which we'll talk about. But mostly, we're just going to have you just go deep on Sonia and learn who she is and what she's been bringing to the network marketing, direct selling community for, gosh, I'm going to say at least 15 years, maybe 20 years, Sonia. I'll let you fill in the details once I'm done introducing you. This superstar has coached over 500,000 people around the world in direct selling. She comes from Tony Robbins' national sales team. She was a national sales trainer for Tony Robbins for years. She brings brilliant strategies and psychology and grace to the direct selling community. And when I met Sonia, I don't know, maybe you remember, I don't remember, but I'm going to guess 10 years ago, but could have been 8 or 9 or 15. I've seen a lot of people train and coach and speak and philosophize and give people direction and coach. And very rarely do I meet somebody that has the grace and the class and the generosity that you do, Sonia. I was immediately drawn to who you are. And who you are has manifested a beautiful community and tribe that follows you. And who you are has manifested a great friend in me, because I always love being in your presence. I'm always inspired. I'm always fascinated. I'm always delighted. So thank you, what you've brought to Richard Bliss Brooke in the last 10 years. And on behalf of the 500,000 people that you've brought grace and beauty and insight to in the direct selling community. Thank you and welcome to Global Influencer.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. I'm going to get a big head if I listen to that all day. My goodness, that is high praise, especially coming from you, sir. I so admire and respect the work you've done, both in the field and from the corporate side, and especially from the training side. So that is high praise indeed. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So people want to hear stories. I like getting stories out of my guests here. So, probably one of the most fascinating things when I read your resume for the very first time years ago, national sales trainer for Tony Robbins, I was thinking, what is that? Who are those people? How do you get that job? do you fill out a resume and send it in and they
there
interview
is a story.
you?
There is a story there. If you like stories, I've got plenty of them. So
I love stories, and I don't know that I've ever heard this story. How did you become a national sales trainer for Tony Robbins?
Well, it was a complete accident or coincidence or karma, maybe, whatever you believe. I was not looking to do it. And maybe I can just share very quickly my background. I grew up in a very, very small town in Canada. Even by Canadian standards, it's a small town. There's like 1,200 people in this town. It's a town called Lillooet, which, if you know where Vancouver, Canada is, I'm sure you do. If you go north of Vancouver up to Whistler, which is a very famous ski area, and then you drive another 2 hours into the wilderness, you will find my hometown called Lillooet, British Columbia, which is a beautiful place. It's a logging center, very, very rural, very remote. And I had the pleasure of being born there and growing up there. And
did you win the Miss Lillooet contest?
I did, actually, now that you mention it. Yes. I'm not sure the competition was fierce, but yes, that was one of the things I got to do. It was very sweet growing up in that environment. And those of you that have come from smaller places, I'm sure you'll agree. It's just lovely to feel that connected to people and part of a community. There were 42 people in my graduation class. So That gives you an idea of the size and the scale of it. And a lot of the people I went to school with are still there. It's that kind of community. So Yes, it was lovely to come from those humble beginnings, that's for sure. And then, yeah, how I ended up working for Tony, it was a very strange coincidence. I had a summer job. I was actually getting ready to move to Vancouver, Canada. So, Vancouver, as some of you know, it's one of the larger cities in Vancouver. And I was about 5 hours away from that. And I was heading off to go to school and study music. And as my summer job, I was hired by the local village to do some, I guess they call it outside work. You know, we were part of a group of students who were really hired to just clean up the parks and sort of take care of the town. And as luck would have it, the day I showed up for work, they had also hired a male student to run this large piece of heavy duty machinery, like this big front end loader. It was a big Kubota front end loader. And he decided he was going to work somewhere else for better money. And so I remember the first day I showed up for this job, the crew supervisor looking at this group of 5 skinny girls and saying, "Do any of you want this job?" And I, of course, had never driven any piece of heavy duty machinery, but I thought, okay, well, this could be interesting. And I asked him how much it paid. It paid a lot more than the going rate that I was going to get. So I said, sure. So I ended up spending my summer on this strange piece of equipment, and I would drive it around the village, and I would dig ditches and, you know, pull out trees and do all kinds of maintenance work with this, you know, huge piece of heavy duty machinery. And the reason that this relates to Tony Robbins is the noise on that thing was pretty profound. So I had to wear those head protectors, you know, over your ears. And so spending 8 hours a day on this machine, you know, just listening to the vibration of the noise wasn't very exciting, but I was a clever kid and I figured out how to, back in that day, hook up my Sony Walkman. You know, everyone's listening to cassettes. I'm really dating myself, but yeah, I figured out how to get my earbuds up underneath the ear protectors. And so I would listen to cassettes all day long. And someone had given me a set of Tony's Personal Power cassettes, which was, you know, his original program. And so you can imagine listening to that material 8 hours a day over the course of a summer, how embedded that got in my subconscious. And I just devoured it. I was really interested in personal development at the time, and I loved his message, and I really connected with the ideas that he was sharing. And Richard, I swear to God, I had this idea one time as I was driving around one summer day doing whatever I was doing. You know, I was going to Vancouver to study music, and I was very serious about having a career in the music industry. And I remember just this one thought flickering across my consciousness, and it was this: you know, if I didn't pursue music, I'd go work for this guy. And that was the only thought I had about it. Never gave it a second thought after that. By the end of the summer, I ended up moving to Vancouver. I was in school. I was, you know, going to classes, and I was downtown in the city one day, and I was lost. And it was raining, as it often does in Vancouver. And I walked into this large office tower, and there was a beautiful kind of reception area. And I walked over and I looked up, and there was this massive life-size photo of Tony Robbins. And I realized I'd walked right into their franchise division in Vancouver, Canada, looking for directions. And of course, I recognized his photo and, you know, said to the person behind the desk, is this like some kind of a Tony Robbins training place, or what is this? And of course, the person behind the desk, being the great salesperson that he was, not only, you know, got me talking about Tony Robbins, but before I left, had me signed up, you know, for his next event, which was happening that weekend. And in this location, Tony didn't often do live events. This was like a video-based training center. So they had video programs of his trainings, and then you could come in for a weekend and, in addition to doing the training, you know, take part with a live group and whatnot. So here I was, a starving student, you know, no money, and it was quite a stretch to put that on my credit card, but something just told me to do it. And after I did that event, I, of course, signed up for the next event. And one of the programs that Tony used to teach, which I don't think he does anymore, it was a brilliant program called The Power to Influence. And what I loved about it is that it was really based on the psychology of human behavior. So I was not interested in sales. I had no interest in that at all, but I was pretty interested in people. And because of my experience in the music business, I recognized that my success as an artist wouldn't just require profound talent, but the ability to network and influence my way into record companies and be able to sell myself to the professionals in that industry. So I went and took the program for that reason. And I was so fascinated with what I learned that I actually got really, really curious about doing that for a living. And there's a lot of other stories in between what happened then and where I ended up. But yeah, I ended up eventually getting invited to work with Tony on the road. So I was part of a SWAT team of 5 or 6 people that would travel from city to city. And we would go in maybe 6 or 8 weeks in advance of Tony Robbins' live event. And we would basically just go out and mass market, to everyone we could. The marketing techniques we used back then were pretty standard for the seminar business. So we would cold call companies. We would get our, foot in the door and get in and talk to the decision makers in those companies and see if we could come in and do some kind of a workshop, a free workshop or a presentation to their sales team or their executive team. And during that time, we would teach them, these influencing skills and give them a sample of what Tony would do in his live programs. And then often, we'd have a chance to sell tickets to his event and go on from there. So that's kind of the background of how it all happened. And yeah, I ended up, I took that position and thought I might do it for a year just for the experience. And I ended up doing it for 4 years. I was on the road with him for 4 years and literally lived out of a suitcase for 4 years. So it was pretty intense time. Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy. But what an amazing education that was. Yeah.
So when you would go into a town, there would be a live Tony Robbins event, say 2 months in the future.
Yes.
Would you be starting it? Because a lot of this was pre-internet, right?
Oh, before the internet. Yes.
Yeah. So would you be starting from ground zero to fill that room?
Yes. Yes. And that was the education. Sometimes it depended on the city and what group we were working with. Sometimes we'd have some phone support. We'd have a team of people here in San Diego that would call in and book some meetings for us in advance. But even when we had that happening, it was very skeletal. Like we would arrive into a city and literally be given, a cell phone. And back in those days, it was those large walkie-talkie phones. We thought we were really, really cool because we had those. They would give us accommodations in a rental car, and that was it. And it was just up to you to go beat the bushes and book whatever kinds of meetings you could and sell as many tickets as possible. So if we had a few core meetings set with companies, we would work with like the real estate companies, the mortgage, financial planners, copier companies, anyone with a sales team, we could get in and basically be beneficial to. So yeah, it was quite a production in terms of cold calling and getting out and doing those presentations every day. And literally, some days I'd be in front of 3 to 5 different audiences, and it would just be a race to get from one part of the city to the other in order to get in front of those groups. Yeah. And then, we had like 6 weeks, maybe 8 at the most to get the room filled. So it was pretty intense.
Typically, how many people would be in the room?
It depended, on the city and the time of year. I think one of our largest events I remember was about 4,000 people. So a team of 6 of us, could get 4,000 people in the room if we really hustled. Depending on the time of year, sometimes that was better or worse, or certain areas were more interested in Tony's work than others. But yeah, I'd say on average it was, maybe the smallest were like 2,000 up to about 4,000 people. Yeah.
Well, there's a lesson for all of us in network marketing that are trying to figure out how to put 6 people in in a room, right? Or 50 people or 100 people.
Yeah.
Take a lesson from burn the ships, pack your suitcase, go to the town. You don't get to leave until the event's over.
Nope.
And here's go to the next town unless you fill that event.
Well, that's it. And here's the thing. We didn't get paid a dime to do that. It was all commission. So if your meeting canceled, that was too bad. You had to figure out a way to replace it. Yeah. So it really was. Yeah. It was really intense work. I learned so much about how to keep myself motivated when things got tough. I learned so much about connecting with people and presenting to people and knowing how to influence in a really elegant way. Yeah, there were definitely times where I questioned my sanity in terms of what I was doing, but I'm so glad I stuck with it because it really was an incredible education. Yeah.
So how did you pivot from that to discovering a niche in direct selling and network marketing?
Yes. Well, that is kind of like another moment of destiny, because in addition to all the traditional corporate people that we'd be in front of, obviously, as you know, network marketing professionals are very interested in personal development. So we would often be invited in to also present for network marketing companies. So that was really my first introduction to network marketing. And this is 25 years ago. So I would be asked to come in and do training for all the major companies, back in that day. And I really loved the people. I loved the model. I really appreciated like how committed people were to their personal growth. And I think why I naturally transitioned into doing more and more training and coaching in that space is the work I did with Tony in many ways was like building a downline. We had X amount of time to get out and network and meet people and do whatever we could to get them excited to purchase from us. So we would build this massive customer base. And then occasionally we would meet people that wanted to do what we did. So I would recruit them and train them and get an override on them. So, in that short 8-week period, it was like building this massive downline in a city, but then we would leave it all behind and move and start all over again. So when I, started training in network marketing, like the skill set that I developed and the personal skills were just so transferable to that profession that it was just kind of a natural fit. And then the more training and coaching I did, the more I really fell in love with the people and the philosophy behind this profession. And it's just been kind of a major focus for me since then. Yeah.
So tell us about, the thing that struck me about you, Sonia, was your grace and your eloquence as a marketer. And the thing that's always struck me in a bad way about network marketers is how harsh and abrupt and desperate and almost resentful or angry or reactionary they are in trying to get people to see their way of seeing things. And you have what might be called an elegant approach, which sort of fits you. I tried to get you to come on this interview with bedhead and you wouldn't do it, right? I've only seen you with elegance in your aura.
Well, Monday mornings are a different story, that's for sure. But thank you.
So tell us about that. What is an elegant approach, and how does that benefit people building teams and building residual income?
I think it goes back to what I mentioned, when I first was in that program with Tony, The Power to Influence, it became apparent to me that sales really is the highest level of service. It really is. Like when you understand what people need and you know how to communicate the value of what you have in a way that makes sense to them, and they decide to move forward and purchase it or get involved or whatever it is, there's just no higher way to serve people. And my image of sales before that was fairly negative. I had no interest in being like a typical salesperson. But I think when I really appreciated what sales is and how, when you understand those basic principles about people, you really can serve them, it just changed the whole feel of it to me. And that's why I got really interested in it. And I have to give Tony an enormous amount of credit, working around him. We spent a lot of time in the field. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him personally, but I did have opportunities to get trained with him and spend some personal time with him. And he's just a master. He's just a master at understanding how to communicate with people and how our minds process information. And, if you really do feel like you have something that can truly change people's lives, you can communicate that to other people in a way where it can be really well received. And I totally agree. I think, that's maybe why I got such traction originally in terms of the network marketing space, because I was one of the first women to come in who I think really was fairly effective at selling, but didn't do it in a very, old school traditional way. It just was never my style. I was always interested, though, in people. I was always interested in learning about people and finding out ways to help them. And when I made that flip in my mind, it made it so much easier to do it. So, in the initial coaching programs I did and training programs, That's what I was teaching, especially to women in this space. And they just loved it. As you know, there's so many women involved in network marketing. So I think for the longest time, many of them have felt kind of left out because they've looked around at the typical training that's been available, or they've looked to their upline leaders, and a lot of them were men, or they were teaching, kind of these outdated ways of connecting with people. So I think it's just, it's really where business is at today too, especially with social media. It's a relationship-based business, as you know, and if you can really come in with that attitude of service and of knowing how to connect with people and knowing how to ask questions to find out what is going on with them, what problems they have that you can potentially solve, and then be able to show what you have, as the solution to that in a really elegant way. It's not that difficult, I think, to find customers and business partners. It's just knowing how to do that effectively.
So you've also coached a ton of people, and I don't imagine you can come from the Tony Robbins environment and not have coaching be a high skill set, a big distinction, whether you call it that or not. But moving people from point A to point B when they won't move on their own.
Yes.
That's basically what a coach does, is supports people in asking questions, making decisions, making moves that sitting there on their own aren't going to happen. So as you look out on the landscape of network marketing, Sonia, you see perhaps 95% of the people, mostly women, that want this to work for them.
Mm-hmm.
They want to make $500 a month or $1,000 a month or $5,000 a month or more. And yet they're not moving.
Mm-hmm.
They're not moving in a powerful way. Some people call it stuck. I call it curled up on the couch in a funk. It's not that they really don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's that perhaps they have a conversation in their head about, well, maybe somehow I can get away with not doing that. Or maybe if I sit here long enough and stew, something great will happen for me. Well, maybe I'll get lucky. Or what do you say to people that are not in motion,
Mm-hmm.
to get them in motion?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if you found this to be true, but the single biggest obstacle I see, especially for women, I think it's true for men as well, but especially for women, when it comes to connecting with prospects and potentially talking about their products or their business, is this massive fear of looking like a salesperson. Like, they're so afraid that their friends or family members, or maybe even total strangers, are going to see them as, this quote salesperson. And I think for women especially, we're so connected to other people's validation and approval. So it just feels really challenging, to kind of position yourself that way and potentially be rejected or be seen as someone who might be, quote, taking advantage of other people. So I think you're right. Even though a lot of people know what to do, it's that obstacle of like, I still feel icky. I still feel uncomfortable talking about this. And it's, in their head, it really is this sort of perception of I'm taking something from someone, I'm imposing on them, or I'm trying to get them to buy from me. They're doing me a favor. It's that whole feeling. And they just, unconsciously will avoid it because it just feels unaligned, with who they are. So I know for me, like when I've coached people and witnessed some pretty incredible transformation, the thing I really try to encourage them to do is really see themselves as problem solvers. And, even in terms of their prospects, I know, in the old days, I know you were probably around during that time and heard this too, originally when someone joined a network marketing business, you were encouraged to make your list of 100 friends and family members and just go talk to anybody. And yes, that is still in some ways a great way to start, because if you know a few people who might jump in and help you out and get your business started, why not, go in that direction? But there's this myth, I think, that like everyone is a prospect.
Right.
I've heard it in companies with skincare. Everyone with skin needs our product, or everyone who's fat needs our weight loss product. And I think that can set people up for failure because not everybody either will need your product or want your product. So like the first step, I think, to success and what makes it a lot easier for people to approach people is if they have a more clear picture of who their best prospects really are. And your best prospects are people with problems that your products can solve. And I know that sounds almost intuitive, but that's like an exercise I've given, my students or the people I coach, and really get them to think about, like, who needs your product. And if you look around your company, or you look at the people who've been buying from you, or you look at, the demographics that are represented, there's clues there. There's moms buying your products, or there's brides buying weight loss products, or there's baby boomers using weight loss products. There's kind of patterns there that you can learn to recognize. And I find when network marketing professionals really just start tuning into that, and be able to really identify who are these people that have problems that we can solve through our products and our business. Not only do they end up talking to people who are typically more open, but then they really do start to see themselves as people who come in to solve these problems. Now, your prospects may say yes, they may say no, but it's a very different perception. Instead of coming in and trying to push something on someone, you're recognizing there are people out there with legitimate issues and challenges. I have a solution, and it's just my job to see if I can get them to take a look at it. So it's just that shift in perception, I think, that really makes a difference. And I've given like students exercises and things, and just by getting them to talk to people and just ask questions, and just casually listen for, those issues that are there, whether it's, a weight issue, or a skin issue, or an energy issue, or a sleep issue, or, they're unhappy in their jobs, or they're, a mom who's working many hours and doesn't get to see her young kids. Everyone's got some kind of problem they're trying to solve. And I know you're brilliant at that, Richard. That's one of the things I first really loved about you too, is you're so present with people, and you're so good at asking questions. And that is, I think, one of the most important skills we all need, just that capacity to get present with people and ask questions and listen. Because if you can pick up on the problems that people are suffering from, and your product happens to be a solution, it's just so much easier, I think, for people to feel brave, to mention it. And then knowing how to talk about it too makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think just the shift of when two people come together, normally the salesperson sees themselves as, well, my job is to talk, talk and tell, talk and tell, talk and tell. And the prospect over here, they don't really have a job, but they do have sort of a spiritual need as a human being, as a spiritual being. And that's a need to be understood, to be seen, to matter. And so when a salesperson comes together with a prospect, and it doesn't even matter if it's a salesperson, if it's two neighbors come together and one of them just talks, the other one does not actually feel like hanging out, right? They don't feel honored. They don't feel safe. They don't feel heard. They don't feel seen. They don't feel like they matter. And so it's just not a special experience. And so as a salesperson, if we can just make that one shift, hey, I know for thousands of years you thought your job was to talk and tell and sell. And the problem with that is sometimes that works if you're really good, but most of the time it just irritates people. And so what if you just flipped it and let them do all the talking? And how you do that is ask questions. That's the only way to get somebody else talking, right? Ask questions.
Yeah, and I think, it's one of the innate skills we have as women. I think there's plenty of men that have it too, but women, I keep telling women that all the time. It's like, you are built for this. It's like, there's certainly training and ideas and structure, but it's like, if you just show up and are genuinely present with someone and just care and just ask questions, ask them about their family, ask them about their work, ask them about their health, whatever makes sense in terms of your product or your opportunity, and just really listen. Like you said, people are dying for an audience. They're dying for someone to show interest in them. And, I learned that early on. It's like, people will tell you everything you need to know about them, to influence them, if you just ask questions and listen. And, then the next step is knowing how to show what you have can solve that. And just, having some language to do that effectively.
So tell us about the Biz Academy for Women. This is your current labor of love the last couple of years. This is the manifestation of everything you've ever done, bringing it to a head for women in network marketing, direct selling?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
is,
Well, I was so lucky when I first got introduced to this profession. I was invited to personally coach, top leaders in a few different companies. And I was lucky to work with some amazing women. And I learned, even more about the profession from working with them. Just really had an incredible education in terms of what it takes, I think, to build a successful network marketing team and business. And I love that work. But, over time, I found like there was just more and more demand on my time. And, I wanted to be able to help people on their teams and be able to share some ideas that would be useful for everyone. So I moved out of the sort of personal coaching space into doing group coaching. And then even that was getting, a little demanding. So I started creating courses online and put some of my content together in these online courses, which worked really well. But as you mentioned, like I've had this amazing good fortune, especially through social media, to reach a large following. So it's like, how do I help 500,000 people, potentially learn these skills? And it's certainly not going to come from me showing up and sharing my time all at once. It's just not going to work that way. So I've learned a lot about online marketing kind of by accident, to be honest. I never thought this would become a focus of mine, but over the years, I've learned a ton. I've been invited into some really cool mastermind groups with industry professionals, and yeah, I've just learned a great deal about how to deliver curriculum online. So that's what sparked this idea. And yes, a year or so ago, I launched this academy, and the goal was to be able to provide, all the steps that anybody would need, but especially women, to be able to build a six-figure plus network marketing business. And so that's what I basically created all the curriculum around, is this simple 3-step process that I teach. And I wanted to make it super affordable so that anybody could plug in and take part in this. So for very low monthly fee, people can come in and get access to all this training. We have an amazing community in there of people. I'm just so humbled. I think we have people from at least like 45 different countries and
wow.
all different levels. And, I mentioned to you, like, it is humbling for me to go into our Facebook group and see someone in the Netherlands share about something that they did that was really successful. And then I'll see a photo from a team in Dubai, who are working in like a really remote area. And it's just, I think the internet today is just the most incredible gift to this profession, and to be able to use it effectively to connect and to develop relations and serve people is just the most amazing thing. So yes, I launched that a while ago, and it's been a labor of love. It's been a lot of work, but I love doing it. And yeah, it's for me just, a way to really be able to help as many people as possible in a way that they can afford.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing about something like that is, that's $100,000 a year worth of education, which in network marketing, if you build in a legacy company, a company where when you build it, you get paid forever, that's worth millions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, one of the unique things about our profession is you can invest hardly anything. I mean, a year's worth of your program is what, $500-$600?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And out of that, you can build a business worth millions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where else can you do that? Where else can you spend $600, $500, $1,000, $2,000 and be coached and mentored to build a business worth millions?
Mm-hmm.
And you can do it in a short period of time. You can do it in 4, 5, 6 years, maybe 7 years. You can
Mm-hmm.
build a business like that that'll last a lifetime. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I've seen network marketers make is when they get their check, whatever their check is, it's $500, it's $1,500, it's $5,000. They're still so oriented towards job income, linear income, that they see the whole check as theirs. And I remember I was coaching a guy about 5, 6 years ago, and I asked him how much money he was making. I don't remember what he said. I think it was $5,000 a month or $15,000 a month. And I asked him, what percentage of that do you invest back in growing, the business? And he had the most priceless look on his face, looking at me like I just asked him a question that, made no sense at all. He had this blank look on his face, and he just said
Wow.
nothing. And I mean, that's happened so many times in my career where people think if they're getting a check from their company, that the way the setup is they should keep it all and just go spend it and then go earn more.
Mm.
And what they're missing there is the greatest leverage you and I have to earn more money, to double our check and triple our check, is us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like we're the horsepower that can get leveraged into doubling and tripling and quadrupling the income.
Mm-hmm.
And if we just invest in us just a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, we can go from 0 to hero.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad to hear you say that. I know you're a huge advocate of personal development and investing in yourself. I mean, there's no way I'd be here doing what I'm doing without having not only invested myself, but, been supported and mentored by some amazing people along the
Yeah.
way. And I remember that very first event I told you about that. I mean, I had no money, I just kind of knew in my heart, this is the right thing to do. I put it on a credit card. I may have been, overstretching myself a little bit at the time, but it just ignited this appetite in me for that kind of work. And you're so right. I think anytime you can invest in learning from people who got the results that you want, you're just going to save yourself so much time. And, these days there's really, like you said, almost no excuse. There's just so much good training available, especially on the internet. There's so many amazing programs that are fairly affordable. So have you ever been asked that question, Richard? Someone asked me that once, like, if you look at how much money you've invested in your own self-development over the years, do you have any idea? All the seminars, all the books?
It's bizarre you asked me that.
Yeah.
Because I've told this story a few times. I think I'm 65 now. I think I was about 50. So I had been full-time in network marketing for 25 years or something. I'm not good at that, but I think I'd been full-time for 25 years. And I was coaching a group of my top leaders in my sales organization. And I had my coach, who was a totally separate, pretty expensive coach. I had her come and be a guest speaker on my coaching call. So she was coaching the people I was coaching. And somewhere in there, she asked me, she said, Richard, how much money have you invested in what I would call, transformational development? Not just skills, but, success comes through us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's really not a matter of like manifesting success out there in the world. It's a matter of us becoming different people. And when we become different people, our world just changes around us. We just bring a totally different world to us. And that's how you create abundance.
Mm-hmm.
And so the kind of work that she was asking me about was not going to the national convention or that kind of stuff, but actual money I invested in 11-day programs, 7-day programs, 5-day programs, 3-day programs, 2-day, 1-day programs, where I would, basically assault my belief systems. Because you go back to the distributor we talked about earlier who's stuck, right? Well, like you said, it's just a matter of changing your perspective. So you spun a story for that stuck distributor about, hey, you're telling yourself a story about you've got to go sell and get rejected. What if you just went and discovered what kind of problems they have? Maybe they're not even a candidate, right, at all. So then you don't have to sell. But if they are a candidate and you really find out what their problems all are, they're going to ask you if you have a solution. So you just change the story and boom, people get into movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so what she was asking about, Richard, is how much money have you invested in changing those core stories that have you play small? And I had no idea, Sonia. So I had her come back the next week to the call the next week. And in the meantime, I went and added it up as best I could. 22 to 50. So I don't know. Is that, 23 years or something? I don't know. $250,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In 1983, now I was making pretty good money. I was making like 40 grand a month. I invested $11,000 in a set of videotapes.
Mm-hmm.
That's like maybe half of my net income for the month. So, ladies and gentlemen, think about your net income. Would you invest half of it in a set of videotapes? And I just did stuff like that constantly. Why? Because who I was
Yes.
as a barely got through high school, angry, resentful, introverted, small, negative thinking chicken cutter was not worth $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Not to other people. And that's how you make money in our profession, is be worth the kind of money you want. You want to make $100,000 a year? You have to be worth that to a lot of people. Maybe 1,000 people on your team. You have to bring that kind of value, and you can't do that if you can't even get from point A to point B yourself, right? You got to get off the couch. And then you have to be able to listen for helping other people get off the couch. That all requires not just investment. It's not just about money. You and I've had plenty of people that invested in our courses. I don't know what they're thinking. Like, if I throw money at it, magically that's going to do it, right? And it doesn't. You actually have to engage in the training. That's part 2.
Right.
But if you do that, oh my gosh, you can't help but transform. You can't help but 90 days later be a different person.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think that's why I have willingly spent so much time with people in the network marketing space, because I have this, I guess, belief or philosophy that people are attracted here for many reasons. There's this opportunity to earn great money. There's opportunities to help people through the products. I mean, there's so many great benefits of being involved in this profession, being part of a team, the travel, the perks, the cars, whatever it is, the camaraderie. But to me, I think the underpinnings of this entire profession, it calls to people to grow. It calls to people to step into who they truly are. And, that for me was the biggest benefit of all the work I've done, is really discovering a lot more of who I am. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that. And that, I think, is the ultimate reward that everyone gets by moving through whatever obstacles or challenges surface as you're building your business. They say it's a personal development plan with a paycheck, which is true. You get paid very well to grow and evolve. But at the end of the day, it's the who you are that you discover that is priceless. And that is the biggest reward. And I've never seen people more interested or more willing to do that than the people that show up in this space. So I do feel like there's this kind of divine element to it that just is really supporting people in that kind of transformation.
Yeah, well, you are a huge gift to our profession, Sonia. I have a grand appreciation for how special you are, because there's a lot of trainers, there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of programs, and they're not delivering the spirit and the heart, the intuition and the wisdom that you are. And so I'm honored to introduce you to my audience in Global Influencer, and I encourage you, audience, to seek out and find Sonia Stringer. She is no longer Miss, what's the name of that town?
Lillooet.
She's no longer Miss Lillooet. She has transformed.
Yeah, there's a lot that's happened since then.
And she can be of great service to your wealth building and network marketing. Sonia, thank you so much for joining me at Global Influencer.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We'll see you down the road.
Definitely. Thank you so much, sir.
Hey, everybody, don't forget to share this interview with your team and share it with anybody that you care about, because Sonia can help anybody from any walk of life. Thanks for joining us.